So some of the program you'll be familiar with, possibly because it's been in the public domain since the end of May, early June, mainly the shows in our big houses. First show we'd like to talk to you about is Suppliant Women, and Maria Fleming, my colleague, is going to come up and tell you all about it.
About the Suppliant Women, and this is a script, a €2,500 Greek script by Aeschylus. I'm going to say that wrong every time. Aeschylus, every time we have a conversation, I pronounce it differently. And I was first approached by Stephen McManus, the programme director of the festival, to ask if I would be interested in working in this production. And at the time that he approached me, I was just back from volunteering for a week in the island of Chios off Greece in a refugee camp. I'd also just finished working for a year with Waking the Feminists, which you may be aware of was a project to address the issue of gender imbalance in Irish theatre. So when Stephen asked me, would you be interested in working on a play that has a feminist theme and is about asylum seekers and women coming to Greece seeking asylum, I said, well, funny you should bring that up. I would be interested in working on that. And the issues involved was very close to my heart. And what really intrigued me about the production as well was when Stephen said that my main role in it is to look for and then look after a community cast. So as you know, with Greek plays, it's all about the chorus. And the company who have produced this, Actors Touring Company, this production has been produced in a number of UK cities and up in Belfast City in Northern Ireland. And each time they go to a city, they recruit the cast from the local community, and it's a volunteer community. We've defined a community cast of 50 people, and there are 3 different choruses: the Suppliant Women, the Citizens, and the Men's or Soldier chorus. And the Suppliant Women, that's 30 to 40 young women, aged 16 to 25. And when I then looked at the video of the show, they are the show. They are the show. It doesn't happen without them. They come on stage at the beginning of the show and they're there until the end. This is going to be the opening show of the 60th Dublin Theatre Festival on the stage of the Gaiety Theatre. And what a fantastic opportunity for young women and to come together and work together. And as I say, on themes of feminism and migration.
I'm going to do something slightly clunky here, which is that I'm going to skip forward in the presentation because until recently Maria was working at the Arc, and it's she who has selected the Theatre for Children season. So rather than me, as I do each year, saying, I believe this is very good, Maria told me so, she can tell you now why it's so good.
So the first show that we have is If Only Rosa Could Do Magic. And the picture that you see is the very beautiful Katya, who is just a superb clown. And one of the jobs that I've done during my career in theatre is I worked for Barabbas Theatre Company, who some of you will know, and that is a theatre of clown company. So clown is a big love of mine. So it didn't take much for Rosa to convince me that she was a good show to come to Ireland. And the age group for this is age 5 to 9, and it's just a really beautiful show. Rosa is a child who, to the outside world, appears to have everything. She has all the toys and all the gimmicks and the beautiful princess costume, but what she wants is more than that. She wants friends and she wants time with her parents, and that becomes apparent through the clowning in the show. So it's a very beautiful show. The next show that we have is Poggle, and this is Barrowland Dance Company from Edinburgh in Scotland, from Glasgow in Scotland. And it's about a young boy he's quite nervous and shy and is afraid to take risks and doesn't like climbing trees and doesn't like getting dirty. And he goes into a woodland and he meets a magical creature, Poggle, who entices him to come and explore and climb trees and have fun. And it's all done through movement and music and song, and it's for age 2 to 8 years, and it's really beautiful. And the last part of the show is they have 10 minutes where they allow the audience to come on stage and play with them on the set. And then the final show we have, and you enter the space and there's a big yurt tent in the theatre space, and you go into that yurt tent, and within that is a little camping tent, and within that tent you meet 2 characters. These 2 characters actually played by 2 actresses, but they're playing 2 young boys who are travelling from Syria to Norway, and it tells the story of their journey. It's quite dark in what happens in the story and the theme, but they have beautifully managed to make it age appropriate.
This is a room. It's our birthday this year. It's also Dublin Youth Theatre's birthday. They're 40 years old since Paddy O'Dwyer kicked them off up on Gardner Street, Dublin. So one of the deficits in the festival is that we, as Maria's just described, a great season of theatre for children, and then we aim for 18 plus in our the rest of the program. Of course, sometimes there are projects that are suitable for younger people, but it's an area we often miss out on. So I like the idea that this is one of the ways to address that by having our own city centre youth theatre, very good youth theatre, works with fantastically talented young people, and so this is a piece about homelessness, which is another one of the very pressing issues of today. Come away with me to the end of the world. The end of the world, in the title, you're learning the end of the phase. I don't know how many of you were fans of Demis Roussos back in the day, but there's a Demis Roussos song called The End of the World, which features in this play. This is a company called Ranters. They've actually been to Dublin twice before and have been presented in the Fringe Festival. Paul there on the extreme left was the winner of the Best Actor Award at the time. And I suppose kind of the cliche of Australians is that they're quite extroverted, outdoorsy, not reflective. But this is a very easygoing, reflective, thought-provoking, erratic, charming piece. Next up, Little John Nee. Some of you were at our launch last night. Some of you who weren't anyway will be very familiar with Little John Nee. Born in Glasgow, grew up in Donegal. He's a performer who had a small man with a big voice. But this is a show about valve radios and despotism. So this is Little John. He's a small man in stature, but he's ambitious to take on Donald Trump and the world that people like Trump have created. It's a show. Little John is very associated with Galway. He regularly collaborates with Laura Sheeran, who was playing the Saul last night. So storytelling and song and polemic. Class, featuring Stephen Jones. It's co-written by Iseult Golden and David Bourne. Iseult is a contemporary of mine from UCD Drama Stock. So the class and the title is a pun on the idea of a school, but also on the idea of social class. So it's set around a parent-teacher meeting where the parents who are not together go along to hear how their child is getting on, and it triggers their own memory and their own experience of school, and then the two actors also play the children. The Sin Eaters, well, probably most of you, if not all of you, are very familiar with Anu and the fantastically powerful projects that they presented at the festival over the years, shows like Laundry, World's End Lane, Bardo Corner, Sunder. This is their newest show. It will be presented out, maybe you're familiar with ESP station, or rather Pigeon House, out in the Coolbake Peninsula. It's set notionally in the early 1980s. This is the time in the wake of Anne Lovett, which I certainly remember as a teenager, in the wake of the enactment of the 8th Amendment to the Irish Constitution, and also the aftermath of the Kerry babies. So there are a bunch of women. The Sin Eaters, the metaphor of somebody, a scapegoat who takes on the sins of the community. I think you put some bread on their chest that they absorb. So this is about the way that the state has treated Irish women and its attitude towards their bodies. So I suppose in this metaphor, the Sin Eaters are the women who are taking on the sins of society. It's also about the Irish family, which is where everything begins and ends. This is a lovely show, and there's actually only one member of the Ryan West family is not included in this year's festival. This is Oliver West, son of Michael and Annie, and this is a piece by Dead Centre, who of course you'll know from Chekhov's first play 2 years ago. Basically the story of an 11-year-old boy, slight cheat, he's 12 now, maybe nearly 13, but it's made up of musings on Shakespeare's advice from fathers to sons. So for example, Polonius Laertes, I don't know if that actually features, but it's this whole thing about the relationship between fathers and sons, absent fathers, musing on the idea of what greatness is, what you will grow up to be. It's an hour-long show. I was in the Peacock in, I think maybe it was late March, when it had its first public performance. So they made it in the rehearsal room, a small group of them. And the look on Ollie West's face when he was confronted for the first time with an audience of 130 people was both terrifying and exciting. Ollie's mother, Annie Ryan, on stage in a Corn Exchange show for the first time, I would say, in not quite 20 years, but certainly long. Obviously, she, of course, performed in Chekhov's First Play in 2015. So they've done a contemporary version of Nora. The bones of it is Ibsen's play, Doll's House, but it's been brought right up to date. And there's Annie, and then beside her is a young woman called Venetia, who has just graduated from the Lear this year. So we know that, particularly with Corn Exchange, when they're in a space like, let's say, Desire Under the Elms, which they did in Smock Alley, or a Girl as a Platform thing about the Art Centre, or before that, Captain Hot Gin Roof, they're an incredibly popular theatre company. They make very sophisticated and accessible and smart work. Playboys, this is an artist who is new to the festival. Martin Shari, who has roots in Dublin, but whose mother lives on Inisheer in Galway Bay. You can tell with the Z in it, it's probably not James Sing's Playboy of the Western World. You can probably gather from Pat McCabe there and to Rebecca Gannan that it's going to be some kind of exaggerated or interesting or sideways take on Irish identity. So what it is it's kind of, it sings, traces of Sing's Playboy of the Western World, mixed up, mashed up with Martin's own biography, Father died when he was young, so it's the usual Irish mix of tension between generations, and at the same time what he's done is he's bringing in some of the new communities, or people with different heritage, conventional Irish heritage. So it is set in a community of whom there are, there's a fellow who comes again, you can see the program, comes and looks for a job. He's black, but he gets a job in the pub because he's actually staying everybody to read all hands of the day. This will be presented in New Theatre, not for many performances, just one preview and 4 performances at the beginning of the festival. Really happy about this show. We were meant to do it last year with Fish Amble, but they ended up being quite preoccupied at the beginning of the year with the 1916 project, or 2016 project, centenary project. So it was postponed until this year. Oftentimes we find that we don't have enough space in the city centre for plays where we think there will be an audience appetite for more than a few performances. So what's been great is Hugh Murray out in the pavilion is very entrepreneurial. So this is set in prison. 2 men. One has murdered a family member of the other, and the other has, in retaliation, done the same. And a perverse warder has put them in a cell together. It's not perverse in the sense of wicked, and therein hangs the tale, hangs the play. Fantastic cast. Running for 2 weeks as well, reflecting the fact that there's always an appetite for new work from Rough Magic. And I think we know, I'm trying to remember the remainder of the cast, Roxana, Nikim, and then Rebecca O'Mara. I'm just forgetting who plays the other man. He was probably in the program. But, yes, it is, thank you. But, I mean, things like, you're in safe hands with Owen Road there, he's a fantastic performer. And a favourite of the Festival Doors, I believe. I hesitate to use the word quirky, but it's a little bit like that. It's irreverent, I think it'll be funny. I think it's going to be really interesting to see how they realise an Antarctic exploration station where somebody actually has to go under the ground through the floor in Smock Alley. But no doubt they've engaged people who will help them to do that. Second violinist is having its debuting in Galway tonight. We were lucky enough, some of us last Friday, to attend the dress rehearsal at the O'Reilly Theatre of this. So this is the next collaboration with Donald Dennehy, between Donald Dennehy and Enid Walsh after The Last Hotel. So it's about a second violinist recovering from the aftermath of a broken relationship. We have 3 singers on stage, the crash ensemble. What's really, certainly what I really made a strong impression on me is the choral singing in it. And it's very powerful, it's accessible music, it's propulsive, it's contemporary, but it's, I wouldn't say it's easy on the ear, but it's very sophisticated music. And I hope that I think it's going to be a big hit when it opens in Galway tomorrow night. So I really, and again, because it's an opera, because the singers are resting their voice, there are only 5 performances of second violinists. I really enjoyed it. And it's really nice because it's set in the milieu of an orchestra, and so the second violinist is actually metaphorically somebody who plays second violin. The singing is great, and they were holding back as it was dressed, but I thought it was really, really good. And it's the kind of sophisticated, high-quality production that we love to have at the festival. So, Wojciech in Winter, Gabrielle saw it in Galway last Saturday. You may have seen the Irish Times not terribly into this, but Michael Billington I think got it right, and he called it terrific. This is, so it's a curious piece in that Buchner died at the age of 23. He never left, there's no autographed manuscript of the book. So it's always kind of a work of scholarship and reconstruction, but it's a story of, it's one of those first kind of modern tragedies. The story of this harassed young officer, Wojciech, who is cuckolded by the drum major, who is the object of experiments by a crazy doctor, who is bullied, harassed, and is delusional. And so what Connell has done is taken this play with built around. I mean, the casting is absolutely fantastic. It's even one of the reasons to go. We've got Paddy O'Kane and Camille Sullivan pictured there. We have Rosalie Linehan, who opens the play, who will actually be honouring at this year's gala night. Rosalie plays the hurdy-gurdy woman. Then you have Barry McGovern, Stephen Brennan, the next generation of Rory Nolan, Susanna Derickson, who I was in college with, Camille Sullivan, who's a Dramstock as well, and then Peter Coonan, who was years ago, last time was in the festivals and Corn Exchanges, Sarah and the Albums. Really, really good cast. And then additionally, you have Schubert's music, Winterreise, which is gorgeous music, and from around the same time. So what they've done actually is effectively used Schubert's music. You get the story of Wojciech straight. I mean, again, there's some discretion as to the order in which the scenes happen, but it is absolutely recognisable as Wojciech. But Conor Linehan is playing live on stage, and I think they use maybe 22 or 23 of 24 songs from the Winterreise cycle, and they've commissioned contemporary lyrics for that. So the music is interspersed through the action of Wojciech and advances, not in the sense of like pop lyrics, but it advances the action. So I've been trying for years to get the Royal Shakespeare Company to come to Dublin. So I wrote, and actually the artistic director himself, Gregory Doran, replied to me and said, while he did not have a play that they were touring, played by Shakespeare, they were reviving his production of Venus and Adonis, Shakespeare's erotic poem, and we know that it is a little bit racy, so if you see puppets and things suitable for children, not necessarily. So it was done in collaboration with the Angel Theatre in London. The original production, which was very well reviewed and well received, was from 2002, but they revived it and are touring it throughout this autumn. An hour long, has live music and narration, and it's a really charming and sophisticated show. And it's great that the Royal Shakespeare, nothing wrong with Tala, but the Royal Shakespeare Company will be visiting Tala. You probably expect to find them in the city centre, but again, it's a reflection of the ambition that Michael Caven, his artistic director, has for the work that his audience will be able to see. And what's brilliant is, by being out in that part of Dublin, it enlarges the catchment area for people who might be able to come and participate in the festival. Next up is the Abbey's production of Ulysses. We don't have an awful lot of information about this because we haven't announced the cast yet. What we do know is that Graham McLaren, one of the Abbey's co-directors, will direct and design this. This is a version that Dermot Bullock, who was first produced in Glasgow in 2012 at the Tron Theatre. In fact, actually toured the Greenwich Arts Centre, I think, that year or subsequently. But this is a new production. But anyway, come the autumn, we'll have a production of Ulysses. So it'll be really interesting to see how they interpret this, and of course, obviously, the action of Ulysses takes place all around the Abbey Theatre and the rest of Dublin. But this is a solo show from Dermot, who's a member of the Theatre Club Collective. She's actually an alumna herself at Dublin Youth Theatre, and this is a piece made of, I suppose, challenging material. Her brother died tragically in 2009, and subsequently she found some tape recordings that her father had made of her brother and her when they were younger. And using these as kind of memories, as artifacts, as field recordings, she's made a show about, I guess it's about her grief and moving through that grief when somebody dies, when somebody's taken away. Perversely, they're the one who gets all the attention. It's as if you're not here. So it's a play about absence. It's strong material, but it was shown last year in our in development season, and we got a really extraordinarily, despite the subject matter, got an extraordinarily positive and engaged response and discussion afterwards. It's already actually signed up to go on tour with a bunch of our shows to Canada in New Year, simply on the basis of the work in progress. It is a show, the subject matter may not be for all, the style may not be for all, but I think it's going to be a really, really strong project. Frank Hicks says hello, by Pat McCabe, who was at the launch last night. So this is a play, I mean, it's been seen occasionally since it premiered in 1992. There are people who would believe that Frank Hicks's was one of the first examples of that physical storytelling style in Irish theatre we've become so familiar with since, let's say, through shows like Stones in His Pockets. Yeah, Stones in His Pockets, exactly. So this is a revival of the original production directed by Joe Byrne of Co-Motion, who featured a lot in the festival in the 80s and the 90s. Actually, Pat McCabe was in the local County Lonesome. I don't think it was a hit. At the Olympia. And then Leaves of Heaven is Pat McCabe's sequel, if you like, to Frank Hicks's, where we see Francie Brady in Dundrum Mental Hospital. Looks very different graphically. Also, we have a 30-year-old woman directing the AIDS Festival show. It's a play that originated in London at the Royal Courts in 2010, subsequently been to New York, and they will be transposing the action. It's set in, I think, Hampstead in the original production. And it's a story of a talkative, argumentative, intellectual family who have the youngest child is deaf, but has never learned sign language, lip reads, and has now become a member of that deaf community. But then the young woman comes home, the daughter of deaf parents who's losing her hearing herself. So it's a family drama, but it also starts asking questions about what, as the title says, what tribe. This is Keith Wallace, as I was saying before. Keith describes himself as an activist. He's an actor and an activist. The structure of this show is like a basketball game, a sport I'm very familiar with, in 4 quarters, an epilogue. So this is about Black Lives Matter. This is about the experience of being an African American in the United States, and about the caution that people need to exercise in order to keep themselves safe, because it's a very different experience for African Americans, statistically, as we know, than it is. So what I like about this, it's a kind of it's a spoken word piece, but it's a direct address, but and it's very simple in its form, but it's very engaging and stirring. And once again, it is about a contemporary issue, but still has plenty of theatrical value and plenty of enjoyment. The American Embassy are supporting access to presenting this, and it's actually going to happen in tandem with Black History Month, which oddly access are celebrating, but that's great. I don't know if anybody was there last night. This young lady addressed the audience in Meeting House Square and charmed everybody. This is Grace Cahill, who is the star. Have I skipped another page? No, I'm okay. Grace Cahill, who is the star, or one of the stars of Girl Song. So we were talking last night about the future and so on. She's the youngest artist in the festival, 8 years old, and we invited her up on stage to tell us about what she thought of the future. And it was scary and encouraging at the same time. So this is Emma Martin, who is a dance artist, but also who works a lot in theatre. She worked with Brenda Walsh, and with any of you have seen Arlington, the middle section was choreographed by Emma. She's also worked at the Globe for the production of The Jamie of True, which had a largely Irish cast. She also worked at the Royal Court. But here she's an opportunity to make a dance piece in her own right. She was last with us at Dance Hall at the Samuel Beckett Centre, which was very well received in 2015. Somewhere in the background, certainly this project began as a response to Bulgakov's The Master and Margarita. I'm not sure that much of that is left, except for Emma's working with archetypes. The structure of it is it's in 4 parts, and beginning with Grace, the dancer performs to a recorded monologue, and then the subsequent 3 sections are progressively older women, a woman in her 20s, a woman in middle age, and then an older woman, and then they dance in unison or together at the end. So it is a wordless version of Happy Days. This is clearly their version of Winnie. Willie is not pictured, but he's no doubt somewhere on the ground on the floor. And what I think is really interesting about it, obviously, I suppose people are quite familiar with Samuel Beckett's work. They're frequently an opportunity to see English language productions of it. We had a national with Deborah Warren's production of Fiona Shaw at the festival, probably about 10 years ago now. But I think what would be really interesting would be to see a perspective on Beckett from another culture. And watching the show, they're exquisite and meticulous physical performers. Only 2 performances of the show, and some of the big guns. Eugene McCabe's King of the Castle, premiered at the festival in 1964. It's a play that's not often seen because McCabe didn't write that many plays, and he's not often produced. I guess people associate more so him as an author, as a novelist. The last time the play was produced in Dublin was in the late 80s. I think Gary directed it as well. It doesn't exactly follow the story of Shakespeare's Lear, but Gary defines his mind the story of patriarch is like an Irish Lear. So it's about the King of the Castle, played by Sean McGinley, who despite his great masculinity and force cannot father a child with his wife. So he conspires the foreign neighbour, one of his circle, for this to happen. Of course, therein hangs the tale and the tragedy. Marty Ray is the other cast member who's been announced in the senior brochure, and I was talking to Gary Galway last week, and I think John O'Loughlin is cast as well. We know Gary Hines particularly for her work with large ensembles, and she's she's an amazing director from that point of view. If I think of her productions of the Murphy plays, like the Conversations in the Homecoming and in the Dark. So what we're going to have is 13 fantastic Irish actors by one of our best directors in a rarely seen landmark for its time. They both won an award because of the controversy when it premiered in 1964 at the festival. Rapids is about HIV/AIDS, and Rapids is an acronym, I can't remember exactly what it's for, but it's about, I suppose, the next generation of young gay men. The older generation struggled, the young people don't know the struggle that they underwent, and maybe have to learn all over again how to take care of themselves. So this, who here is a fan of Buffy the Vampire Slayer? Okay, great. So they use the metaphor, Sean used the metaphor of Buffy having to tell you that she's a vampire, which she eventually does in the series, and uses it around the disclosure of people who are living with HIV. And so Rapids uses the word polemic at all. I promise you the festival will be really enjoyable. It's not going to be that polemical. But this is on the topic of people's sexual health, on the topic, if you've heard of PrEP, pre-exposure prophylaxis, and about young men taking care of themselves. Endings. Quite by accident, this is a show that has lots of resonances with During the Goodies. Endings, which has lots of resonances with During the Goodies. I have to mind her. Tamara Stolwick is an Australian, I guess you call her a performance artist, but this is a piece of theatre. And for this show, what she's doing is she's working with those 7-inch records. Some of us will recognise what these are. We would have to explain them to young people. And these are recordings of a soundtrack which they manipulate live on stage, as well as a 1/4-inch tape machine, and accompanied by gorgeous folk music played live by a guy called Paddy Mann. So this is and it appropriately comes at the end of the festival. This is a meditation on ending and existence, but it's not at all morose. It's very joyous. It's very uplifting. Previously opened at the Sydney Festival, it's an award-winning play. It's very atmospheric and moving and theatrical. A good house of happiness. So Pan are quite well known to us in the festival. One of the, let's say, standouts of the recent cast was a production of Playing the Dane, where they attacked William Shakespeare's Hamlet. And if you remember, they had 3 actors at the beginning. The audience got to decide who played Hamlet. They also had played within the play. The players were a bunch of school children. Actually, one of them since come to me and has gotten interested in theatre since then. So this is Pan's version of Brecht's The Good Person of Sensual. So the character is can't get ahead and in one gender, so swaps gender, and then is accused of murdering the person who they really are. This is a lovely show. I saw it in the Lyceum rehearsal room in Edinburgh last year at the festival, at the International Festival. We didn't have any room to present it, but I was delighted when Hugh Murray of the Pavilion said he had also seen it and he'd love to present it, could be included in the festival. I said, absolutely. Corinne Polwart is best known in Scotland as a folk singer. I really think of an analogue for her here, maybe somebody like Mary Black, but she also plays the guitar. And this is, I suppose it's a kind of a biographical play, solo performance about migration of birds, about people's connection with the community that they're from, and about being a mother, and about generations. And this is, as you may recognize from the title, it's riff on Kafka's The Trial. So instead of Joseph K, we have Josephine K. This is a situation where we will have more information as time goes along, but certainly Stacey Gregg's reputation and Katrina McLaughlin's as director would make me very interested in finding out more about this show and seeing it at the festival. So Lee Warlock is Flemish. That's a country where art and conceptual art and surreal art is very strong. She is more of a visual artist, but somebody who uses the medium of theatre. So she's a sculptor, and she sculpts objects, and she sculpts people, and she sculpts music, and she sculpts time. One of the guys actually in the show, she used to babysit when we started, but now he's grown up and run away with the service and run away with her. So this is a surreal, dirty, rocky, raucous piece of theatre of the kind you're not likely to see anywhere but the festival. It's loud, it's badly behaved, and yeah, it's really interesting. And I guess this is one thing, we have a very strongly Irish programme this year, and that's very deliberate, and we make no apology for it because I want to avail of the opportunity of the 60th anniversary to showcase the quality and the breadth of Irish theatre. But this is one of the really interesting international projects inserted in there to give people a completely different. There's no literary tradition in Belgium at all, and this is coming from a completely different place. And this is one of the shows where people sometimes say, "But is it theatre?" But as far as I'm concerned, yes, absolutely. And I'm just going to speak briefly to you about Festival Plus. Festival Plus is where we augment the festival. Delighted this year to be supported by Creative Ireland to expand for our 60th birthday party. We were busy with spending our money on the shows. We didn't have much more in the way of resources to expand the programme. But you'll see what we have here is the familiar and very popular features like In Development, an opportunity to see some of the shows that may be part of next year's festival at an early stage in their process. The tickets are free, they generally sell out. So particularly as friends, I would encourage you to get in because they're quite small capacity of them. And then we're going to be doing the type of things that you would expect of a 60th anniversary journey. Ferger is going to deliver a festival lecture. We'll look at the festival in the context of the changes in Dublin over 60 years. We're going to do an oral history project, which we may be in contact with some of you about. I mean, when we tell the story of the festival, of course, everybody always goes on about the tent blew away, and the rose tattoo, and Princess Grace, and latterly Mr. Muffin got lost. You hear those stories a lot. But I'm interested about the other stories. I'm interested, like you guys have a lot of knowledge about the festival. I'm interested in stories on both sides of the curtain, if you like, and beyond the masterpieces, beyond the well-known figures. So we're going to do, this is an oral history project. We're going to, Jose Miguel Jimenez is going to start working on that in the next month.